On today's show, the offseason is here, and it's a big one for the Cavs because something that happened in Game 7 means the East better run through Cleveland next year. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. The offseason is here for all 30 teams. The NBA Finals concluded on Sunday night, and I had a episode essentially taped. I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to say, and then I was going to use the third segment to talk about what the finals meant, the results of the finals at least, what that meant for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then the first quarter starts. Pacers get off to a good start. Tyrese Haliburton scores 9 points in the first 7 minutes and goes down with a right Achilles injury. And I am going to assume, based on what it looked like on the floor, based on the reaction, based on the way that this is being handled, that Tyrese Haliburton tore his Achilles tendon. And it's very unfortunate. I think it's a heartbreaking injury for a guy that I think if there was a NBA playoff MVP, Tyrese Haliburton might win that award this year. Like, think about how the NHL does it, where they don't have a finals MVP, they have a postseason MVP. I think Haliburton might have gotten that award for how good he had been for the Pacers this year. But he is, of course, now going to be out, I would assume, most of, if not all of next season. And that is going to make the Indiana Pacers a very different team. They're not going to be a team without Tyrese Haliburton that is capable of going back to the finals. They're not going to be a pushover. They're not going to be terrible. They'll be fine, but they're not going to be a championship contender next year without Tyrese Haliburton. That is the unfortunate reality of the situation. And Haliburton's injury is heartbreaking. It really is. It sucks. You hate to see it. But you also add it to the list because Damian Lillard, same thing happened. I don't think Milwaukee was very good this year. Did not think Milwaukee was going to be very good next year before that injury happened. But I think Damian Lillard having his Achilles tendon tear cemented them next season as not being very good. Jason Tatum, of course, in conference semifinals, he tears his Achilles. He's going to miss most of, if not all of next season. The Boston Celtics will be good next year, but they will not be a team that is a true threat to get out of the Eastern Conference. So I say all of that to say this. The Cavs this year had a great situation to go out and win the East. They failed to do so. They came up terribly short. They did not come anywhere near their postseason expectations. But now the real pressure is on them. I think that the way this happened on Sunday, not Oklahoma City winning, because I do think the Thunder were, for most of the year, the best team in the NBA. You probably say the first month and a half of the season, it was the Cavs, considering they started 15-0. It's probably a fair thing to say there. But from that point on, I think it's fair to say OKC was the best team. Very worthy champion. But in the Eastern Conference next year, the Cavs are going to be the favorites. And I think it was one thing to say, oh, the Cavs are going to be the favorites, but they have to get past an Indiana team that beat them the year before because, you know, if Tyrese Haliburton would have been healthy, the Pacers were going to be very good again next year and be a very formidable challenge, not only for the Cavs, but everybody else in the Eastern Conference. But now the Eastern Conference is a bunch of unproven teams. The New York Knicks, I don't think were the typical level of a normal conference finalist. And I don't think the New York Knicks thought they were, considering they fired their head coach after they reached the conference finals They showed Tom Thibodeau the door. That tells me they didn't think they were actually that close to being a championship contender. The Orlando Magic have not gotten out of the first round. They haven't. They've not proven that they can be a true playoff winner. I've got serious questions about their offense. I think it's fair to until you see it. You can keep going down the list. The Pacers are not going to be great next year. They'll be fine. They're not going to be great. The same can be said for Boston. The Miami Heat are not going to be very good. The Milwaukee Bucks, as I mentioned, not going to be very good. You can look up and down the Eastern Conference, and it's really difficult outside of the Cavs, the Knicks, and the Orlando Magic right now to make a true case for any other team to come out of the East. And I think that while none of those three teams are perfect, I do think that the Cavs are certainly the best of that bunch. And I would pick them to beat, and of course, it is 11:33 on June 22nd right now. So there is a lot that can change between now and next postseason. But the pressure is on the Cavs because they're not going to have an opportunity quite like this one, maybe ever again. This is how it was when LeBron was here the second time, where they were such heavy favorites to get out of the Eastern Conference every year. And sports gambling was not as widespread at that point, at least not publicly accepted at that point. Is probably a better way to put it. So I don't know what the line was or what the odds were for them to win the Eastern Conference or to win the finals at the start of the season. Certainly probably would be lower than what it is right now, considering those teams had LeBron and these Cavs teams are improving. But the Cavs are going to be the favorites on FanDuel, on every sports book you can find, to win the Eastern Conference. They are going to be the number 2 team to win the NBA Finals behind Oklahoma City. The Thunder are going to be the favorites. The Thunder should be the favorites. But that brings forth a lot of pressure. The Cavs are in a situation where they've not proven they can actually get it done in the playoffs. But we are entering a specific point in time where they're not an old team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not a bunch of young pups either. They have guys that have sort of been there. They've been to the second round of the playoffs. They've come up short. They've got their playoff scars at this point. I think that's a fair way to look at it. They are at a point now in their trajectory where if they don't make the finals next year, it's not a success. It's not. That's where the Cavs are. They are going to be heavy favorites in the Eastern Conference because, one, they're really good. They won 64 games and came up short, of course, in the postseason, but they are still a really good team. That doesn't just go away because they didn't succeed in the playoffs the way that we thought they would. But two, because the rest of the Eastern Conference is in shambles. It is. I cannot think of an Eastern Conference that is going to be, or that has been maybe weaker than what next season's East projects to look like. And of course, things can change between now and then. There will be trades. I suspect there are going to be a lot of them this week. There was one of them on Sunday that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But I don't know how many moves out there are that can turn a bunch of teams in the Eastern Conference that right now I don't view as contenders into contenders. I don't know what trades are out there that's going to change the way that I feel about the East or that you feel about the East. I think we are at a point right now where the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference are the Detroit Pistons. And I really like Detroit's young core, but I don't take them seriously next year as a championship contender. Maybe 2 years from now, but they're not at this point yet. I really do think that if the Cavs don't win the East next year, and I understand that it sounds a little ridiculous to put these expectations on them before free agency starts, before the NBA draft on Wednesday even gets here. But that's kind of what happened on Sunday night. When Tyrese Haliburton went down, yes, incredibly sad. I feel very badly for him, considering that if this was not the NBA Finals, he would have been nowhere near a basketball floor because he very clearly was dealing with that calf injury that turned into everybody's worst nightmare. And it's terrible. It's really hard to put into words how much that stinks. But if you look at this from a Cavs angle, that injury, I think, and there was a lot of pressure on this team already, but that injury ramped it up another couple degrees. Because if the Cavs don't win the East this upcoming year, I don't know that they're ever going to have a better chance moving forward. They're really good. They need to find a way to get better because this opportunity is probably better than any opportunity they're going to get. Not to say they need it to be the best opportunity possible, but it would feel like an opportunity wasted if it doesn't happen. Now, the Cavs were mentioned on the other big thing that happened on Sunday. That other big thing, Kevin Durant. The Cavs were a wild card team, according to ESPN. Now, of course, they didn't get him, but what does their involvement in the KD sweepstakes say about where the Cavs are at? We're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Olipop. I am somebody that I love soda, and Olipop is a new kind of soda. And I have been drinking pop, as we call it. We don't typically call it soda. We call it pop in Northeast Ohio. I've been drinking pop my whole life. I have been. It is a guilty pleasure of mine, if you will. Sometimes there's just nothing better than that cool, crisp, refreshing taste that you can get, but there is almost always something better for you. Well, what if I told you you could mix those two things? You could get the great taste that you're looking for with soda and also get health benefits. That's what Olipop provides. They've got, as I look at the can here, and this is the crisp apple can because I've had the vintage cola one in a few of these, but I like that taste so much that I need to go get more. Like I just don't have any right now. So I had to go call out into the bullpen and bring the crisp apple out for Sunday night. But I read this can and it says supports digestive health. And I think that is much different than any other can of pop I've looked at. There are not other cans of pops that say, yeah, this is actually good for you. This is actually something you want to put in your body. Well, no, Olipop is that. Those other ones aren't that. So you can be getting the crisp, refreshing taste that you're looking for in pop while also getting some of the health benefits that you're not getting anywhere else. If that sounds good to you, you can get a free can of Olipop right now by just buying any 2 cans in store, and they will reimburse you for one. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find Olipop near you. Again, that is drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And Sunday afternoon, news broke that the Phoenix Suns traded Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets. Durant was traded in exchange for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in Wednesday's draft, and 5 second-round picks. And, of course, that doesn't pertain to the Cavs other than the fact that this could have been an opportunity for the Eastern Conference to get stronger. Maybe Kevin Durant would have been traded to Miami. Would that have made the Heat more formidable? Maybe a little bit. I don't think it would have turned them into some contender because I think that Heat roster is very, very flawed anyways. But nonetheless, another superstar stays out west. So that is one impact on the Cavs. But number two was, if you read the report by ESPN's Shams Charania, he talked about the wild card teams in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. And he mentioned the Denver Nuggets. He mentioned the LA Clippers. And he mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I don't necessarily know what the avenue would have looked like for the Cavs to get Kevin Durant. I really think that while it's likely they made calls here, because I do think that this is a front office that does its due diligence. And I don't think that they land somebody like Donovan Mitchell via trade unless they're doing their due diligence. Because if you think back to that time, the Cavs were never mentioned as a potential trade partner with the Utah Jazz when they traded for Donovan. So I do think that Kobe and the rest of that front office are going to make the call when guys become available. And I suspect that's what happened with Kevin Durant. Now, I don't know what a trade would have looked like. Because the Cavs are in the second apron, they would have needed to aggregate salaries in order to get Kevin Durant. Being a second apron team, they cannot be in the second apron and aggregate salaries. So would they have traded for Kevin Durant? They would have had to shed a significant amount of money. I don't necessarily know that it's possible. I don't know that that would have been worth it for Kevin Durant. That's not the point here. The point here is that the Cavs are being aggressive. That is what you should take away from this, is that the Cavs are being aggressive just by being tied to Kevin Durant, even though they were never going to get him. I don't think that the Cavs were ever going to be able to trade for Kevin Durant. But the fact that they saw that as an opportunity to get better, the fact that they thought they needed to get better, the fact that they're willing to see what it would take to play ball in that type of trade situation, I think should be looked at as a good sign for the Cavs. I do, because this is the team, and I just talked about how the opportunity right now in the Eastern Conference is better than it may ever be for the Cavs. This could be, and I suspect Evan Mobley is going to have a very long, very prosperous NBA career, and I would think a lot of it, if not all of it's going to be in Cleveland with the Cavaliers. This could be the best chance that he has to win the Eastern Conference. And it's not to say that he won't win it multiple times with the Cavs, because that could happen, certainly. But the way the East is shaking out, this is a real opportunity. And of course, all of this stuff happened before Tyrese Haliburton's injury on Sunday night in Game 7 against the Thunder. But for the Cavs to be connected to Durant, and again, I don't think this was ever going to happen, but for them to be connected to Durant, it tells you that they know running it back completely and totally is probably not the avenue that they should be trying to go down. They should probably be trying to make changes to the roster, whether they're big changes like adding a Kevin Durant certainly would be, or smaller changes on the edges. The Cavs are in a spot where they need to shake things up at least a little bit. And I do take this just being mentioned again in these talks. I do take this as a good sign. I take this as a sign that the Cavs know, one, what the opportunity in front of them is, and two, that what they had previously was not good enough. They need to become a postseason team. Does adding Kevin Durant make you a postseason team? I don't know. I think that his track record, aside from being with the Warriors, would tell you no, it doesn't. And I don't know that KD would have necessarily been a great fit here for as much of a talent as he is. But the thing that you should be taking away from this is just that the Cavs were mentioned. Because this is going to be, from everything that we have heard, from anybody who talks about the NBA, is what? This is going to be a wild couple of weeks. The NBA draft is Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And then, of course, free agency is at the start of July. And there's been a lot of conversation, speculation about the next 10 days or so and how much moving and shaking there's going to be across the NBA. And that is something that I do think can benefit the Cavs. And one thing that I look at here, and maybe I do wonder too, is as part of the Cavs being a wild card here, is if they were making calls to potentially be a third team to help facilitate a deal. And that is an area where the Cavs have had some success in terms of building the roster. If you think about how they acquired Jared Allen, they were the fourth team in a deal. They jumped in, which was also a deal that sort of affected Kevin Durant because that was a James Harden trade. But they jumped in and they got Jared Allen for very, very cheap at the time. Just, I believe, in Milwaukee Bucks first round pick. They got, which was the 30th overall pick in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. But they jumped in and they got Jared Allen as an add-on to just make things work. Could I see situations where they do that? Could that be something as part of this trade? I don't know. Probably not. My instant thought was, because I don't know if Dillon Brooks is going to play a game for the Phoenix Suns. My instant thought was, I wonder if the Cavs could trade for Dillon Brooks. Like, does Jared Allen for Dillon Brooks work? And of course, Dillon Brooks makes about $1.5 million more than Jared Allen this year. So you can't trade that one for one, which makes this a much more difficult exercise because Dillon Brooks is certainly not a player that is worth cutting salary, that much salary for, and finding your way into the first apron as opposed to the second. So that is a thing that I would be surprised at. But I do think now, as we are going to start to see, maybe as soon as today, we are going to start to see more moves in the NBA. I think this is going to be a crazy week. I think that the next 2 weeks are going to be very, very crazy weeks. But I do think the Cavs are going to be an aggressive team as far as things go right now. I think they're going to be a team that, whether or not they are the ones trading for the star players in a deal, I would doubt. But I do think that they're going to be the ones that are trying to help make things happen for other teams. And by trying to help make things happen for other teams, they can get better in the short term. If they can make a move that maybe a team doesn't want a certain player in a trade, the Cavs can take that player on if they feel as if he's going to help them, if it fits in for them financially. That is a thing that I think would make a lot of sense for the Cavs to do. Of course, we don't know who these players would be. We don't know what trades are going to happen. But the fact that they were connected, even just as a wild card in a deal that I don't think was ever going to happen, just the fact that they were connected to Kevin Durant, I think, is a really good sign. If you're looking for Kobe Altman and the rest of this Cavs front office to be aggressive this postseason, the fact that they were listed as a wild card for Kevin Durant, I think, is a really, really, really good sign. Now, on tomorrow's show, I'm going to talk a little bit about things that I think do need to happen this offseason for the Cavs, but I want to talk a little bit about Evan Mobley leading into that conversation next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of all that cash. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, not just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. You can stop managing your money and you can start building your wealth. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money, because one of the things that you can do there is you don't have to juggle multiple apps. You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan for some of those long-term financial goals that I know you have. And plus, managing money with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. If that sounds good to you, head to monarchmoney.com and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDON NBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. So I said I was going to talk about Evan Mobley. Well, I changed my mind. I'm going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. I want to talk about what the Cavs are perceived as nationally, because I do think that we're in a space right now where a significant chunk of the fan base is down on the Cavs. And maybe that'll change as time rolls along. But I do think it's worth remembering here what things look like nationally. So the Cavs went into Sunday with the second best odds on FanDuel to win the NBA title in 2026. Those odds were plus 900. And then the Houston Rockets traded for Kevin Durant. They acquired him from the Phoenix Suns. I went over the trade earlier in this, and we talked about KD and the Cavs. At that point, the Rockets jumped ahead of the Cavs because it's a little bit of an overreaction. And then Tyrese Haliburton gets hurt in Game 7. And the assumption, of course, is that he's going to miss all of, if not most of, next season, and the Pacers will not be the same threat in the postseason next year that they were this year. So then the Cavs went back in front, and the Cavs got down as low as minus 650 to win the title next year. And as I record this, it's around 1 o'clock in the morning on Monday, June 23rd, just to timestamp this. The Cavs are plus 800 to win the title next year. That is the second best odds in basketball, behind only Oklahoma City. And the market is now opened for the Eastern Conference winner. The Cavs are the favorites at plus 270, followed by the New York Knicks at plus 300, the Orlando Magic at plus 410, the Boston Celtics at plus 460, and then there's a giant drop-off between Boston and Philadelphia. I think some of that stuff for Boston baked in. There's maybe Jason Tatum could be back. I wouldn't necessarily expect that, but it could happen. But I say all of that to say this. I'm going to echo a lot of what I said in the first segment here, but this is an opportunity that the Cavs need to take advantage of. This is their year. There's no more, well, it's just another step in the development. There's no more, we were a year early. No, that stuff is gone. Right now, this upcoming year is the year for the Cavs. I'm not saying they're going to win the title, But I think anything short of reaching the NBA Finals is a failure. And I think that's how we should be operating with how we talk about this team, with how we judge this team. And of course, I know that the interest in the regular season is not going to be the same as it was, barring them winning 74 games next year, because it's going to be a team that needs to prove it in the playoffs. And that is exactly what they need to do. But this is an opportunity, I think, for them to, within the constraints of the second apron, go out and be aggressive. Now is the time for the Cavs to push all of their chips in. I don't know exactly what moves Kobe Altman's going to be able to make. The Kevin Durant stuff tells me they're going to be aggressive, tells me that they are going to want to get better, that they're going to be a team that goes into this summer knowing what is at stake for them next postseason. Everything they should be doing between now and next April should be about getting this team to the finals, because I recognize it. If you're watching this video or listening to this via podcast, you probably recognize it. I think a lot of people on social media recognize it. FanDuel recognizes it. This is a massive, massive door that's been opened for the Cavs. I think regardless of the outcome tonight, the Cavs would have been favorites, but I do think the Pacers would have been, obviously, right there in the end, and that would have been a tough challenge for the Cavs. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. The Cavs, at this point, should be considered the favorites, and anything other than reaching the finals next year is not going to be good enough. That is evident on June 23rd. That's a lot of pressure to play under. That's a pressure the Cavs are going to have to live with all season, but they have an opportunity, I think, unlike anyone they've had without LeBron on the roster, probably in franchise history. And it's an opportunity they might not ever get again. And it's one they absolutely cannot afford to squander. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs today your first listen. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me as we get out of here. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell. And I will be back tomorrow talking about what the Cavs need to do this offseason to make sure they get to the finals.